Welcome, everyone. My name is Ryan Spear. I'm part of PLNU's Alumni Board for Leadership, joined by some of my colleagues, both in WebEx, Miss Maria, and in person, Miss Juliana. And so, guys, we set out a number of months back to set up kind of some programs that would give you practical skills as aspiring leaders or leaders that are already seasoned. And so today, hopefully I can entertain you with just a scintilla amounts worth of interesting knowledge that won't put anyone to sleep. And practical knowledge here, a lot of it is actually supported through clinical psychology, but I'm not going to delve too much into that, as well as organizational behavior theory. So the whole idea here is evaluation development. So we're going to take it first at a high level. What is it? Why, as a leader, do you care about it? Will you need it? The answers to all of these will be yes, you'll need it. Yes, you'll care about it. And then we'll get into what are some things to be cognizant about as leaders, pitfalls to avoid, how do you approach certain problems, and then what generally works in industry. So at any point, feel free to ask a question, interject, post something here, throw a sticky. I will be more than happy to address it. So with that, we'll go ahead and start here, and I'm going to go to the next slide here. If I can use this product. Oh, JB. It's a Mac, it's frozen. Yes, it's the space button. Guys, I'm on a Mac and I don't use Mac at all other than iPhone. So welcome everyone. So what are we gonna go over? So basically 5 or 6 key areas here. First introduction is the what, the why, and the value of evaluation development. Why does it even matter? So next, we're going to talk a little bit about how should you be engaging as a leader. So when you start to oversee people, when you start to lead divisions and teams and groups of people, what are approaches that you should consider? Third is we're going to really talk about goals, and goals are really critical to driving company morale, engagement, employee retention, and then also driving individual aspirations. So at the end of the day, you're working with a person, right? You're not just working with an employee, it's a human being on the other end. Then we'll talk about a fun subject called corrective action, which everyone enjoys doing. I promise is not always what it sounds like. It truly can be a fun thing. Okay, that's a bit of a fib. It's never a fun thing. So, but it's things that will definitely enable you and help you and save you headache and heartbreak. So finally, the last piece we'll talk a little bit about is the best part of evaluation development, which is really recognition. And recognition has a number of different flavors. So we'll talk a little bit about the types, what to consider, some organizational things that you may not be aware of. So with that, we'll start out at a high level, first about evaluation development. What is
Ryan?
it? Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Before I continue, the people online, we can't see that slides. Like we only see the overview. So I don't know if it's the presenter mode, but
JK, we will look into this. Let me do new share, and I will new share this PowerPoint. What do you think?
Let's so I think it is how we're viewing it.
Okay.
I'm gonna turn off presenter mode.
Okay.
See.
Sorry guys, I'm Mac illiterate, so yeah.
Did that help?
Maria, can you see that?
Perfect.
yes.
Okay, so sorry guys, that was a profound spiel about things that couldn't be seen. So with this little dry tribe, let's start with what it is. So E&D. So E&D is used at every Fortune 500 company, any company of any kind of corporate weight will use evaluation development. And really it is a 2-part process. It's first the evaluations, and then, oh, I'll hide these faces here. I apologize, guys. The evaluations and then develop piece. So what is evaluations? It's really setting out, and these are critical, measured objective tasks for folks. And so what you're really doing is whether you have an individual or a group that you're working with, like I oversee about 15 people. So I have both group tasks and goals as well as individual goals that you're going to evaluate and review periodically. And generally it's over a year, but sometimes it can be multi-years. So I've run tasks and goals that are 3- and 4-year initiatives. And then for the most part at an individual level, it'll generally be an annual goal. So you want to incentivize someone and review things and check in at incremental periods over the year. And teams, again, might be different depending on the chemistry of your organization. The second part is development, and that's actually kind of the more important part. It's really important to evaluate where you're at, but it doesn't really matter if you're not improving on it. So development is the activity of adding value, whether that's knowledge, whether that's technology or people process-oriented things. The whole idea there is you're going to take something where you're not at the level you want to operate and optimize it. So really it's a 2-part process that we're going to delve into. So with that being said, we're going to try and hit spacebar and go to the next thing. There we go. Okay, so why would we want to do any of this? So we know what it is, but why would we want to do it? At the end of the day, evaluation development serves two main roles. One is it keeps people in groups engaged in your organization and it develops them. It adds value to your organization. Any organization that wants to compete to have a competitive advantage is going to constantly add to their employees, whether that's knowledge, whether that's, again, skill sets, trade skills, it doesn't matter. You have to constantly be improving or you're stagnating, and you don't want that. Companies can never retain an edge by making old things. Look at your cell phones as good examples. Who's doing really well and who's not maybe doing so well. So if you have a BlackBerry, that's probably pretty bad because they stopped innovating about a decade ago. So, anyways, the whole point there is to drive individuals to continually better themselves, drive teams to continually better themselves. Now, how do you do that? You set out goals, things that they're aspiring to. And it could be a whole slew of different things. And we'll talk a little bit about SMART goals in a bit, but you're really trying to facilitate growth that mirrors the vision and mission of your organization. So every organization has a mission and vision. If they don't, then they're probably not maybe of the most interesting type. So you want to harmonize every goal that you make with your team to align with that mission and vision. So the value here is you are adding value, and how you're doing it is by touching base and growing your employees, your staff, and your teams. So at the end of the day, this builds camaraderie and it keeps retention. And so you might wonder, well, how much is that really worth? I mean, is this just another HR thing, Ryan? Well, let me just tell you, the average $60,000 employee in the US, it costs 30 to 45K to replace them over a 6-month period. So if you lose an employee, that's 30 to 45 out of pocket that you're going to pay as an organization. At our hospital, it's about 60 to 75K to replace the average employee. So you don't want to lose an employee. That's the message. And how do you do that? Camaraderie, building, having them engaged with the mission and vision of the values of the company. So the value here is that you can really retain people, keep them engaged, keep them happy, and again, build a team that's high functioning, essentially. So, but yeah.
Question, Ryan, because sometimes depending on the company, you know, when the company like shows, oh, this is our goals, this is our mission, it is very hard for like specific departments to see what is, how you can align those.
Yep.
Or in my case, I do have, for example, a department that loves a performance feedback and they like rely on it, and another department that is like, this is BS. I don't think that we should be doing that whatsoever. So what is your, you know, like how would you recommend to like approach into a way like, okay, values and goals and to like what is important to like some people that I don't really
Sure.
buy into it?
Sure. So, you know, you'll always have active resistors wherever you go. There's always a subset of populations that you see that empirically in any group over 100. But really, the dissent of folks often stymies from an emotional argument being made. So they say, oh, it's a waste of time. Oh, then no one listens to me. Oh, I don't grow as this. The way you bridge that gap is by talking with them and saying, what is it you want to do here other than what you're currently doing? And you identify areas where they're interested in. Because most of the time, folks can say, lend you some interest to say, oh, I'm interested in X, Y, or Z. Now, it is your job as a manager to take strategic objectives from a leadership team and make them into actionable goals for your functional staff. So if they say, hey, I'm really interested in learning Latin, well, that may not be very relevant towards your company's goals. But if they say, I'd like to learn a new programming language or learn a new skill set, and you can find areas in the organization where that adds value, you should do so. You drive engagement through collaboration. So people will always be disengaged when they feel unheard or unlistened to or unappreciated is the big 3 drivers of resistance. So overcoming resistance is always a challenge, but that's how you get through it. So it's through dialogues. So on the flip side, people who are excited to do it, much easier dialogue to have. So because they'll throw 1,000 things your way. So yeah. So yeah, so some of the big things here again is, and I highlighted on this a moment ago on bullet point 3 there, it's your point as a manager is to take ideas, strategy from your leaders. They give you very ethereal, high level things. We want to be the best organization. We want to be the highest performing hospital. And you're like, oh, these are terrific values. This is just great, but that doesn't give you any idea about what to do. And as a manager, you say, how can my staff contribute to that? And you make their goals functionally actionable off those goals. So in the context of what they're doing. So I hope that makes sense for the most part. So yeah. So we're gonna talk a little bit about, first about engagement types. So this is dependent on kind of where you sit in your organization, right? So the size, the scope of what you do. So I oversee about 15 people, and then I serve about 200-300 of them. You have individual meetings and group meetings. Now they both functionally serve two different foundational roles. I'm going to first talk about group meetings, the second one actually. So group meetings are really about disseminating knowledge. And why do you disseminate knowledge? Because you need your divisions, you need your business units and your operational units to understand what their role and how they contribute to each other is. If you have siloed or asymmetric information in teams, it will lead to bad performance, underperforming. So you can't have one group of folks doing activity A that doesn't contribute to another group of individuals in unit B. So group meetings are generally broad-based strategic dissemination series. And again, depending on where you are functionally in an organization, you may or may not have those. So conversely, our individual meetings, that's more tactical, that's more one-on-one. So really, the idea of an individual meeting is to check in with your staff and to say, hey, how are things going fundamentally? Are things working out? Are you overwhelmed? Are you underwhelmed? Can I give you more work? There should never be a shortage of work. So, but the whole point there is to have an open dialogue. You want to just be open, honest. You don't want to be hard. You want to hear what they're saying. Oftentimes, as you expand in scope, you're not going to know nearly as much about what's going on the day-to-day activities simply because you can't absorb it. You just don't have the bandwidth to absorb that stuff. So the big things here, it's on bullet point 2, ensure all issues. When you're meeting with someone on a one-on-one, like we're talking, you want to make sure you document all issues, all successes, and all opportunities that that individual is having with their current role. Now, it serves for future use in evaluation development, and it also helps stymie any challenges. So oftentimes folks will say, oh, I'm stuck on A, or I'm stuck on B, I need help with C, and they may not have the resources or the knowledge on how to address it. It's your job as a leader to address it. So, the big thing there too is successes, because I guarantee you, if someone shares a success with you in 6 months' time, you probably won't remember what it was, only because you have 10 million things that occurred in between that time. But if you record this, and you could say, oh, looking back, this is what I did with a staff member on this date, and this worked out really well. Conversely, you could do the exact opposite with opportunities for improvement. You could say, well, we really struggled with this here. Why don't we go ahead and fix it? So it's really a great way to record what works well and what doesn't work well in one-on-ones. So I'd strongly encourage, as you meet with people in your meetings, to document the things that worked well, didn't work well, and the successes that were shared. So part of the individual meetings too is a cultural thing about balance. So you don't want to be the manager who's checking in daily saying, how are things going? You might be accused of micromanagement, and they may jump off a cliff in frustration. Don't be that manager. At the same time, you don't want to be disengaged, where you're so aloof and laissez-faire, you don't know what's going on. Because if you do that, you'll find yourself in trouble. So as a leader, you want to find your balancing act. You want to know how much is too much or how much is too little with each individual. Now, the general approach to this is the more junior a staff member, the more attention they may need, but the more senior they are, the more autonomous they may function. And I have some good examples from my own work. I have junior staff that they want to check in every couple of weeks, and I have fully autonomous staff who are at the lead level who are like, Ryan, I am on autopilot, we're good here. So, and I trust them because I know that they have the knowledge, the skill to execute against. So as a leader, when you're starting to meet with people, try to ask yourself, am I micromanaging this person? Is it too much? Is it too little? Do they need more attention, or are we good? So you don't want to be aloof and you don't want to be a micromanager. And then with group meetings, of course, it can be a little bit broader. Most divisions will do quarterly group reviews. It's perfectly normal to do it quarterly. mainly because every time you have a larger and larger meeting, it costs more and more money. So remember that every meeting you have is a minute or an hour taken away from productivity that could have been done. So when you do this as a abstract with hundreds upon hundreds of people, I now have meetings that are with hundreds. It's very expensive. So I would not say do a daily check-in with hundreds of people. So mainly because you'll look like a jerk too. So anyways, so let's talk about the last one, performance pulse check-ins. So performance pulse check-ins are basically just quick improv touch bases. Now, these are the most common type, believe it or not, and you do this probably more frequently in your personal life than you realize. Performance pulse checks really are meant for addressing issues in real time. I'll give you an example. We had an upgrade today, and we had 20 people call in the period of the first half hour, all saying a whole myriad of different things. But thankfully, I have a really good staff that I can delegate this to, and we can work through each one of those issues very succinctly and quickly. And so I was checking in with them all day just to make sure, hey, this action, did we take care of it? Did we resolve it? Have we communicated a solution? So the idea with this is really you're just doing a off-the-cuff check-in to make sure nothing critical is going awry. It's more costly to fix things that go awry long-term than it is to approach it early on. The PMI Institute, Project Management Institute, found that 82% of strategic projects fail because of misunderstandings that occur at the very start of the project. So, meaning if I want to build a swing and all of a sudden 3 months later, I see a couch by a tree, I know something probably got misunderstood there in the communication. So don't be that leader is my message. So that's the first part. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. And again, that really speaks to the second part is you want to obviate from unforeseen challenges. Now you're always going to have challenges as a leader. That's what leadership's all about. It's about managing uncertainty. So don't get frustrated if you have uncertain times or if you get hit with things you're just not going to see. There's not a whole lot you can do, but as a leader, you can create action plans, you can address it, you can escalate it, and those are your tools to always fixing everything. So at the end of the day, performance check-ins are totally up to you. They're based off your leadership style and your voice. So depending on the scope of your management, it could be daily, it could be monthly, weekly, quarterly. It really is up to you for tracking project progress. I ran one project at Kaiser that was $100 million, and so they wanted to touch base daily when we implemented it because it was a lot of money. So, and there was a lot of people. There's about 150 people that were reporting when I was doing it. So that was one example of performance check-ins where they wanted daily, but here at Radies, I'm not having to do that. So it's a little different, thankfully, a little less sweat. So it's up to you to find your flavor with the culture of the organization. Yeah.
Are you working remotely or in person?
Remotely right now. Yeah.
So do you think that COVID and remote work has affected these kind of meetings and check-ins?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, they call it the water cooler conversation. People would walk down and just go say, hey, what's up? Did you see the new Drake video or whatever? You're like, oh yeah, that was hot. And so you don't have that kind of chemistry or camaraderie anymore in the sense of the in-person characterization and element. So folks often now want to schedule time. And I'll give you an example. I currently have about 14 meetings a day. So, that's because people are just like, oh, I'm going to steal the next person's time, the next slide's time. And so you're like, oh boy, this has been a long day. And so, yeah, it's definitely lent itself that way. But at the same time, it doesn't change the function of what you need to do as a leader. Like you need to be aware of everything that's going on that could impact or hurt someone on your team. You really want to make sure you're not hurting anyone on the team or in any other teams for that matter. Continually meeting the mission and vision of the goals of the company. So
one thing that I saw at least in
yeah.
The company that I work for, some of the leaders did during the pandemic is that they added time slots on their schedule. So for example, when Google, you can literally put a time slot that people can just click and to schedule 15 minutes with you or half an hour with you. And it was very incredible to see how people really use it, right? Because sometimes you don't, oh, I had this meeting, but then to have that time that you put yourself available as a leader to talk to whoever wants to talk, and they just have to click a button and say that they want to talk to us. That was almost like opening the gate for leaders.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of part of the thing that I want to hear your input, Ryan, on is to those check-ins.
Yeah.
In age of social media, of like,
Mhm.
or short attention span for society as a whole. How have you noticed like a switch
Yeah.
in behavior into those check-ins, into those conversations that are happening?
Well, I think people fall asleep a lot more on Zoom. So, because they don't turn the camera off. You're like, oh, really, huh? No, it's it's generally, I think, being subject to Zoom all day kind of makes people feel a little mentally imprisoned. So that's just my anecdotal response. But it's definitely different. The human element of us engaging is different than the human element of us engaging on Zoom 24/7 all day. So it's definitely a challenge. You have to be creative as a leader to get around that and to excite people to want to succeed. So yeah, it's something we're dealing with ourselves. So yeah, with that, let's talk a little bit about those goals that we are just talking about. So why are goals interesting, or why do they matter? And might you say, Ryan, well, aren't goals just another requirement by that darn HR? Yes and yes, but they're very important. So goals are more important than just about anything you'll do as a leader, other than financially tanking the company, by inspiring folks to be creative, add value, become innovative. The best thing you can do as a leader is train someone to replace you, to be quite honest. So empowering people to be better than you means you've succeeded as a leader, not that you've done anything deficient. So goals really serve as that platform for both your team as well as the individuals underneath the team to seek new initiatives, to seek new knowledge, to seek new technology, ways of approaching things. And again, you often measure it through various means and you reward it or at least recognize it through various means. The biggest thing about a goal, and this is where people get slipped up all the time, is a person's goal must add value or meet the mission, vision, values of the company. Do not make a goal that simply sounds cool on paper or does something crazy but adds nothing to the company. I'll give you a really good example. So someone the other day said, Ryan, I really want to learn this new technology. I said, that's terrific. How are we going to use that at this organization? Well, we probably won't. Well, who uses it? Well, our competitors do. Well, that's terrific. Your competitors will love knowing that you are now employable by them with this new technology. So the point there being is that, be enthusiastic about anyone who approaches you about wanting to learn a new skill set or trade, but make sure it actually meets the needs of the company. Otherwise, you're probably not investing your time and money very effectively. So it is your job as the leader to understand what the need is versus what the ask is, and to marry the two into something that's meaningful. Again, goals inform your staff of the what, the where, and the why they are relevant. So a lot of individuals get deterred on an individual level because they say, oh, my contributions aren't worth anything, or I'm not a big corporate CEO, I'm not a value. But really the underpinning of every pyramid are the bottom stones, not the top stones. So understand that you need to translate their values so they can see it. Now, defining goals, there's a million different ways to do this. There is a very simple approach that just about 95% of the business world uses, which is the SMART approach. I didn't make the acronym, I just find it clever, that's all it is. So what is the SMART approach? A SMART approach is an acronym for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So what does that mean? It means as you're crafting a goal with your staff for the year or the quarter or whatever the time frame, make sure it's specific to that group. Don't make a goal that is something outside the scope they can do. Boiling the ocean or cleaning the ocean or curing world hunger, that's a great goal. I doubt all of us are going to achieve that. So measurable, something that you can quantify. There are a lot of goals that are terrific that simply can't be quantified. So don't ever make a goal that can't be measured, because at the end of the year, you're going to ask, well, did we meet it? And you'll be like, I have no clue whether we met it or not. We can't track it. So don't make a goal that's not trackable, like Santa. How much did Santa deliver this year? I don't know. Can you guys tell me how much Santa delivered? Because I'm not able to track what he delivered. So make something that's achievable. Don't set something out that's going to drive someone crazy or be a carrot on a stick that can't be accomplished. There's no other better way to deter performance than to make things that are unattainable. So make it achievable, make it relevant to their jobs too. That was kind of harping back to my last point, is make whatever you're setting out to do, whether it's a new language, programming language, skill set, whatever it might be, make it germane to what they want to do personally and that adds to the company. Last is time bound. If you don't have hard deadlines on stuff, it'll just keep getting pushed out forever. So that's the acronym SMART in short. So at the end of the day, you don't always want to impose goals. You want it to be a dialogue between the people, because you'll only foster engagement through collaboration. You won't foster engagement through top-down dialogues. So you want to have an open conversation that says, what might you be interested in the context of your current role or aspiring roles that you may have. So I have plenty of staff who I am training to move to other positions, mainly because I know it will lend value to the organization. So that's a perfectly okay and achievable measure. So those are goals at a high level. Now, the big thing here, types and alignment. So there are 4 types of goals that people have, right? So every goal, it doesn't matter what part of planet Earth you're in, is time-based, performance-based, quantitative or qualitative-based, or it's simply outcome process-based. Now, really what that's articulating is saying that when you're making a goal, just understand what kind of goal it is so you can know how to measure it and see whether it was achieved or not. Now, again, depending on your organization, whether it's a team organization, an individual group, you can have primary sets of goals, secondary sets of goals, but understand your priorities are whatever drive the highest value in meeting the mission vision of the company. So the point there being, don't put too many goals on the backs of your team or individuals, because there's no better way to burn people out than to demand too much that can't be given. So, yeah, you want to balance that with who you're working with, your staff. The other piece to this is alignment. So again, not all goals make the most sense for your company. And as I articulated a little bit earlier, you want to make a goal that's unique to the person, but that also adds value to the organization. Now, you want it to be unique to the person because 2 people could take credit for the same action if it's the same goal. So you want to avoid those types of awkward conversations. So be considerate in how you set out to set these. And again, the big thing there is strategy must meet tactics when setting goals. So source and understanding. So sometimes our goals don't happen the way we think. I mean, I thought I was going to, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. That hasn't happened. So what happened there? So it's really about the source and understanding. Oftentimes your goals do get derailed. There's a lot of reasons. Everyone likes to say it's the individual who's coming up short, but the truth is, more often than not, science has shown that goals get derailed by unforeseen circumstances. So I'll give you an anecdotal one. I have a goal for a certain KPI measure this year that I won't be making. And it mainly is because we put some of the code on freeze through contracts and legal things that are going through our organization. So one of my goals got completely derailed through a legal claim. So there's not a whole lot I can do there, but that's the point being, is that there's unforeseen circumstances that might derail a goal for you or your individuals or your team. So that's perfectly okay. It's understandable. What's important is being open and transparent about where you're at with it. Really, when you do have an individual or your team where you've slightly derailed, but you can manage it, it's understanding what's driving it. What's driving the delta in the actual versus the expected, right? Actual and expected is the most common budgeting technique at any organization. So if you wanted to know how our financing doing, you'd say, well, what did we forecast against and what are we actually burning? So actual expected are the 2 mechanisms you can see with where we're at versus where we need to be. And then once you understand the delta, you can execute a plan. How can I make up this ground? How can we fix this? How can we get on the critical path? The last is defining what you want. Sometimes your goals change in real time as a function of business. So you have to ask yourself, does it make sense to keep this goal or to go somewhere slightly different? So, the big thing here as a leader is identify the risk, make a plan for the risk, and mitigate the risk in executing it. The other thing here is that it's okay to fall short. Just be honest with your leadership teams, be honest with your staff. You'll find plenty of times as leaders when you fall short, whether it's on your own doing or some other doing, that someone's going to be disappointed. That's okay. It is part of life. Don't try to hide it. Just be transparent and open, honest. So it's not necessarily, the last point there, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Everyone thinks corrective action plans are a bad thing. It's like somber. You got to be, oh God, but at the end of the day, we're all humans and everyone's striving usually for the best. So keep that in mind when you start to manage and run large organizations. So With that, you have coaching and escalation. So sometimes you do fall short of that goal. How can you get on it? Well, we call it coaching as a good euphemism. Another one is we call it escalation. So coaching really isn't like, I'm going to go join the soccer team and win the FIFA tournament. Coaching is really about how am I as an individual going to help enable your success as someone who might be a little slightly deficient in meeting that goal. Generally speaking, you set this by setting real clear-cut expectations, right? So if someone's falling short of some idea, first understand why. There might be very valid reasons. As a leader, understand that you don't always have all the knowledge, so don't think or presume you to have it. The second is when you do figure out why they're deficient, is they're helping to reorient them. Maybe they're missing something. Maybe they're missing a skill. Maybe you didn't deliver something as a leader. Maybe a new computer would fix all of that. So identify how you can help realign and reorient them on the right path for some of those goals. There's often going to be shortcomings, whether it's skill sets, whether it's knowledge, whether it's understood projects. It's really up to you to understand what can you do to mitigate that? And if you can't, how can you escalate it? So your tools as a leader are, if I can't mitigate it and solve it on my own, I have to escalate it to organizations who have the decision-making authority to do so. So it's totally okay to escalate. It's a totally reasonable and normal thing. We use it on all the projects that we have at my work. It is a perfectly good process. So any questions with that? We're good?
Had any situation where you had to coach someone that you feel like you need some coach about that coach that you're giving, or what, what is your biggest learning when you're coaching?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if someone fell short of expectations, you do not walk into that conversation thinking you know what it is. So folks will often surprise you with other ancillary things you may not be aware of. So you have to walk into any difficult conversation with an objective mind. Don't be subjective about it. Don't walk in saying, I presume I knew this because I'm a leader. No, think exactly the opposite. Think, what am I missing to make a decision? And you'll find there's a lot more to discover there than previously what you thought. So yeah, be very open, honest, and empathetic towards other individuals, specifically when they're falling short, because oftentimes they're feeling emotional about it. So you want to be wary about burning bridges, build them. So that would be my anecdotal response. So yeah. So I am sorry, this is font like 3. So roles and types of recognition. So we're going to talk a little bit about recognition here. So why do you have recognition? Well, let's be honest here. If you have a goal, you want to reward someone for it. You don't just want to give them a high five at the end or like, a sticker or something. So recognition really has a few elements to talk about, and we could go on for hours about how recognition works. But at the end of the day, understand there's a couple different types. First, there's individualistic recognition, then team recognition. Team is we all collaborated to the same goal. It is very good to share team recognition as much as you can. Don't do it to the point where you're unctuous or cloy about it, but do it so that folks understand that their contributions as a team matter. The second is individualistic, and this is really where evaluation development pans out. So recognition on an individualistic level can take the form of hard and soft is what they're called. Hard are increases to benefits, soft are changes to environment or culture. So oftentimes at the end of the year, they'll say, oh, you did a terrific job. We're going to give you X raise, or we're going to give you a bonus of some kind, or we're going to give you an extra day off. So not all recognition resonates with all people, believe it or not. So in a study of about 5,000 people at our organization, we found that generationally, there are huge differences in philosophy about what recognition wants. So Gen Zs, millennials, younger folks don't want bonuses as much as different other generations. And there's very specific reasons why this happens, but we found that 95% of the Gen Zs wanted extra PTO over a paycheck of the exact same amount. The opposite is true for the baby boomers, sorry. So they said, no, we like that bonus. You give us that bonus, you keep your PTO. And there's reasons behind that, because most older folks will have tapped out on PTO anyways, so it's not a marginal interest to them, but most younger folks have no PTO and they like experiential things, so they want more time off. So as you're learning to recognize and reward, understand that your team is typically going to be a diverse group of folks. They may all respond very differently to different stimuluses. So what works for one person may not necessarily be the best rewarding system for another person. So, and that will take a long time for you to vet out. At the end of the day, having that conversation, like what motivates you, you can't really say that. You have to figure that out as a leader, being a little bit more shrewd than that. It's also necessary because it retains your talent. You know, folks at the end of the day, especially now, it's a hyper competitive demand market. So the demand has way outpaced the supply of folks. So, you know, the grass is greener as a phrase is truly true right now. Everyone is offering incentives to leave. So if you want to retain your talent, how do you do that? Oh, you recognize them, you give them whatever it is, a soft or hard benefit of some kind. So it drives morale, it drives camaraderie because folks know that their hard work means something and pays off. So there is an intrinsic element of I feel great, and then there's an extrinsic element, and I can afford guacamole on my Chipotle later. So so understand that those are two core keys to recognizing folks, and you may not often as a leader be able to influence some of those, most notably the hard ones. So you'll try to collaborate with your HR partners on that as much as you can. So oftentimes soft things you could definitely have much more discretion over than you do fiscal things. So now again, the big thing there is that you really need to understand on an individual level what drives your teams for each individual person, and then also what works for the goals of the team as a whole. As a collective, goals and recognition can sometimes be radically different than individualistic. So being able to discern how I can reward the team aggregately versus how I can reward someone individually is pretty important as far as keeping folks engaged and retaining employees. Because again, it costs way more to lose an employee than it does to keep them. So that's kind of the big thing there. Any questions with recognition? And again, we could go on for hours about the psychology on how this works, how utility theory works.
At Radius, do you guys have any system to keep track of it? Because I figure that some leaders might struggle with making sure that we would make sure that we don't forget to recognize everyone. There is any type of like systems that you're aware that it's like very good.
Weirdly, we have a database where we do. And so we have a couple different methods. So we have a leadership recognition. So I only know about this because I was nominated the other day for it. And so there's the leadership. We also have this thing called the CARES Awards. And so the CARES Awards are kind of like an offbeat thing where folks can nominate other folks for kind of awards, and they do it for anything under the sun. You know, you helped me out with some project, or you helped me with my finance work, or I was out sick and you took care of Maddie, my dog. You know, it's anything. But the whole idea there is they actually track a lot of these awards at the end of the year to say, hey, you know what, you're really cool. You went above and beyond, and you did all these things. And so we do have an actual database that does that. So I'm not saying it fits for every organization. It's definitely unique. It's the only organization I've worked at that has that, but it definitely seems to work. It seems to drive a little bit of satisfaction and happiness.
So it's a recognition from leaders and recognition from teammates?
Yeah. Yep. It's an open forum to nominate folks for awards, and then to just send awards. You don't even have to nominate them, you can just send them. So and then if you have really good friends, they'll just send it to you to troll you. So so they'll write some really cloy message about you just to embarrass you. So yeah.
Yeah, and the reason that I ask is because like right now, I know all companies run their performance reviews on a calendar, and I was just like wondering if there is any like strategy that you can think that would be nice if you don't have like a robust system.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can just program an access database. It's not too bad. Again, you know, it's driving recognition. There's a million different ways to do it. It always comes down to hard or soft. And so the spot awards, I think, work really well because there's not a whole lot of financial cost behind them, and they just give an opportunity of someone saying very off the cuff, you know, I was really appreciative of X, Y, or Z. And, you know, it typically goes to their management team first before they even know about it. So, so it's a really nice way just to call them out and say, hey, thanks. You know, it was really cool what you did. So yeah. So with recognition, the last piece, though, probably the most important piece, is ongoing development, right? So, you know, you have your goals, you defined your goals, you look throughout the year, it worked out fantastic. It was the greatest year ever. And you think, oh, surely I can't develop past this. Well, the truth is we all can develop a little more. So, you know, setting out recognition and rewarding folks what worked well and what didn't work well is actually your platform for what should happen the next year or the subsequent year. So you can say, you know, we really met X, Y, and Z. We really conquered A, B, and C, but we fell short of D, E, and F. So how can we avoid falling short of D, E, and F? Well, you do that by ongoing development. And how do you do that is you identify the deltas. What did I miss? Did I not have the knowledge? Did I run out of time? Did I try to cram too many projects in during go live for this year? Were there too few resources? Did I not account for, you know, all the paid time off folks would take? So the whole idea there is to set better goals and how to manage better goals so that you're not coming up short in future years. So really your recognition platform is actually your platform for establishing new goals. So it works really well when you fall short because it's really easy to figure out what to do typically. Your achieved successes and your missed objectives. Those are the framework for what you should be doing in the coming years. And again, the important thing is missing objectives, you know, it's part of life, it sucks. But at the same time, you can ask yourself in an adult manner, you know, how did I get here? As a leader, how did I do this? What did I do wrong? Don't always criticize your staff. So it's not always your staff. And for things that worked out well, you can say, well, why did it work well? Did someone just step up to the plate? Did I do something crazy? Did we turn on some technology? You know, the biggest thing about this with evaluation development is that for any particular employee, whether they did well or they didn't do well, it's not always them. It's really a reflection of your efforts because you manage them. So as a leader, you want to own that. So if something falls short, it's not them falling short, it's you're falling short. If something worked out well you say, hey, good job. So just remember that as you're starting to lead folks. So with that, I think that's just about it. So any Q&A, folks, feel free, of course. So, oh, I'll check Zoom chat here. Oh, sorry, JK. Oh, I'm not seeing, says Lauren. Well, I hope she saw.
That was fixed at the very beginning, not at the
Oh, okay.
end.
That was awkward because I'm not doing that speech again.
Can you start over from the very beginning, actually, and we'll be
We
good.
have that record button, so maybe opening a Barbera and going through this again. So, so you know, if there's no questions, I will go to the one last slide. So, guys, coming up 31st and 6th, some exciting material from my colleagues, Ms. Juliana and Ms. Maria. So, personal branding on the 31st and salary negotiations. So, how to get that salary. And all the things to consider. So yeah, thanks guys. So other than that, I think we have just a few minutes left. So yeah, cool. So I'll stop sharing here actually. And I think it's